And I will now introduce our very first speaker, Dr. Charu Kaushic. Dr. Charu Kaushic will be speaking about the global need for sepsis research and Canada's investments. So Dr. Kaushic's CV is tremendous and filled with great achievements. So Dr. Kaushic is a scientific director of the Canadian Institutes of Health and Research, CIHR, Institute of Infection and Immunity, which I'll call 3I from now on. She's a tenured full professor in the Department of Medicine at McMaster University here in Hamilton. In her role at the CIHR 3I, she's responsible for making decisions nationally and internationally for CIHR's strategic investments. She's currently also chair of GLOPID-R, which is a global consortium of funders in pandemic preparedness and emergency response research. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she's been involved in shaping CIHR's research response to the pandemic and served on Canada's COVID-19 National Immunity Task Force and Health Canada's Variants of Concern Leadership Group. So Dr. Kaushic manages a large interdisciplinary research program in women's reproductive health on top of all the other stuff that she does, specifically basic clinical and translational research examining susceptibility and immune responses to sexually transmitted viruses, HIV-1 and HSV-2. She's received numerous national and international awards for her research and leadership, and recently she was inducted into the Government of Canada's Women of Impact online gallery and the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. That's a real mouthful, but that's actually the abridged version as well. So Dr. Kaushic.
But thanks for that. I wasn't expecting that the staff had sent like the long thing. I thought it was just going to be a title. So it's a pleasure to be here and welcome everyone. My name is Charu Kaushic, and I am the scientific director of CIHR Institute of Infection and Immunity, one of the 4 CIHR institutes that made this initial investment into putting this network together. So I'm really, really pleased that this is coming together, and congratulations to Allison. People always think that the scientific directors and the institutes know exactly where the money is going to go. We actually don't. We're the last people to find out where the money actually goes. So we shape what the investment will look like, what we are looking for, and then the corporate branches run it, and then we usually find out after it's gone, the notice has gone out to say, well, guess what? Who got the money? It's like, oh, it's Allison. Oh, she's 3 floors from me around the corner. So I remember when we had the strengthening workshop back in 2019, October in Edmonton, the hope was that the network would come together. So very pleased, and thank you for surviving COVID. I think most of us, basically survived it. Let's not talk about thriving. So it's really good to see that you're actually having an in-person meeting for the first time today, and great to see all the different components of your agenda. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, sort of the background, since this is the first time you're meeting since COVID, just a little bit of background of where the thinking was when we were trying to put this initiative together, and why a network. So the first slide is actually, I asked the staff to say, where are we with sepsis incidents in Canada and globally, and was chagrined to see that the numbers are decreasing so slowly. So I'm sure this is more familiar to you than it is to me from the Lancet 2020 review, that the 3 main causes of sepsis, global burden, infections, injuries, and non-communicable diseases. Obviously, the infections are the top orange one, and then the non-communicable diseases is the second bar, and then the injuries is the third one. And it's surprising to see how slowly those numbers are decreasing. So clearly, there's still a huge need to address this issue, which is not just a chronic burden, but it actually leads to high numbers in mortality, which is what the next graph is actually showing, is that, if you look at the global burden of sepsis and the fact that areas which are socioeconomically challenged are also the ones that bear the greatest burden, points to the importance of working to have equitable outcomes. So, if I showed you the burden of COVID, it would look exactly the same. If I showed you the graph of what HIV looks like, it's exactly the same. So it's just to emphasize that there is a global inequity, and it's not just global inequity, there's an inequity in our own country that we have seen play out over COVID, and we see play out over and over in whether it's chronic diseases. We're actually running a workshop right next to you in inflammation and clinical trials to inflammation. And this morning, Sonia Anand was there talking about cardiovascular disease. And again, inequities here in Canada play a huge role in who's carrying the biggest burden of these diseases. So I just want to emphasize that as you move forward, please keep the equity lens in mind when you're addressing issues and trying to find solutions. And then just to flag that, why did CIHR decide to invest into sepsis? So in 2017, the World Health Organization passed a resolution which urged members, and I won't list out all the 9 things, but it was basically, sepsis is a worldwide global issue. All countries need to do something about it. Clearly, it's an area which needs more research because we're not coming up with solutions fast enough. So it was in response to this that in 2018, CIHR institutes, III, ICRH, INMD, so Institute of Circulation and Respiratory Health, Nutrition and Metabolism, Diabetes, and Institute of Population and Public Health, along with my institute, which is Infection and Immunity, decided that we were going to make significant investments into this area. And one of the ways that we do this is when we know that because I'll show you the numbers, that there was investment being made in sepsis. But when you want the community to come together to focus in a manner that is more effective, typically we invest in networks. And I want to acknowledge my colleagues in the Institute of Circulatory and Respiratory Health who actually led that vision. So Ryan is here today, Associate Director of the Institute, and he and his scientific director, Brian, actually held the pen and thought through what would make the best sense and brought the rest of our institutes together to make this investment. So here's what the original, sort of thought was, that what would it look like? And we wanted to make sure that all 4 pillars were involved: clinical, translational, work was being done, but also health services, knowledge translation, implementation science. We wanted to make sure that there was involvement of people living with lived and living experience, et cetera. So those were very important, insights. And back in 2018, when this was being pulled together, it was ahead of its times in terms of the vision that we had. So it's really nice to see that kind of come to fruition at this point. And the goal was to really bring a single national coordinated research network that brings together researchers from all different pillars and brings in all the things that we are talking about, in terms of equity, capacity building, data, knowledge exchange, and involving people with lived experience. So and just to flag, as I was saying, that investments were being made. We pulled up some numbers to show that almost $50 million of funding was being done prior to this network being there. And since this network has come in place in 2019, there's more investments that are going into Sepsis Network. But this research network is really to focus on bringing those different pieces together. And we see this in other areas where in my institute, we pulled a network for the transplant and donation network. And they've really brought their whole community together and leveraged a lot of funding. So our hope is that the Sepsis Network will be able to do something similar, whereby bringing people from multidisciplines and involving other people with lived and living experiences and healthcare workers, et cetera, that there will be a much more leveraging of the funding that has been invested in. And recognizing that your last report actually shows the impact that you're starting to make in this area despite COVID. So 2 years of COVID, we know how that slowed down everything except COVID work. So thank you for all the work that you do, and looking forward, to I wish I could spend the day and a half, but as I said, it's completely overlapped. So I told Allison when she said, I was like, I wanted to listen, but at least I'll pop over and at least, give a shout out to everybody for being here in person. We do have CIHR representatives. As I said, Brian is here, as well as Hannah from my institute is here as well. So we will get a report back on how the meeting proceeds. I just want to congratulate you on, the agenda that has been developed, which is, again, very reflective of the various needs, the multidisciplinary nature, and also for organizing a Cafe Scientific to go with this, which is such an important activity that CIHR has brought back, recognizing that there needs to be a public outreach, rather than just discussing academically all these issues. So thank you for doing that, and I wish you a very good meeting. And hopefully next time this meeting is put together, I'll be here for the whole day and a half. So thanks very much, and I'm just next door if anything comes up or anybody wants to pop in to have a chat.